put ourselves towards Uganda as a country. But the question is, how far have we gone and what are we doing in line with what we accepted or agreed to as a country?
And we're proud to be fulfilling part of the goals of the United Nations. There's absolute gender balance in studio this morning. I am not going to be intimidated by Mildred all through like she always does. Right next to me, to my immediate right, is Linda Asaba. She's the National Coordinator of the United Nations Association of Uganda. Good to have you in studio today.
Thank you.
And right next to her is the usual suspect. He's been in the media longer than very many of us. He's called Richard Baguma.
Are you talking about my age? Good morning, viewers. I'm in really a long period in media, so I'm an old man.
And today we are not talking about media, but we are talking about, of course, the post-development goals of the United Nations 2015. And Richard Baguma is appearing here as the Secretary General of the United Nations Association of Uganda. And Linda is the National Program Coordinator. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start it off from the general point of view, looking at the goals and 2015 being a few years ahead. How would you rate Uganda's performance in the critical areas? Linda, starting with you.
Oh, thank you very much. The Millennium Development Goals, we have actually really tried, because when you look on the report that has just been released, Uganda is on track. There are several that we have not been able to actually get to, but we have reached somewhere on, like, say, the education for all and the one for HIV/AIDS, the goal on HIV/AIDS and other diseases. So we are steadily on track, and we believe by the time the post-2015 development agenda is put in place, we shall be somewhere.
Richard, Linda mentions just 2. Does that mean we are doing that badly? The other 6, she leaves them hanging.
No. I think she's passionate about education. Probably that's why she singled out that. But you see, the target for the Millennium Development Goals 2000 to 2015 on education, primary education, enrollment, was about enrollment, blah, blah. A lot of those we had reached even before. Because we started UPE before. And then we did USE, the one on poverty. Because the targets were, that were in there, we have hit them. When you look at the poverty, the macroeconomic statistics of this country, we have reduced poverty by blah, 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 blah. Okay. When you look at the one for HIV/AIDS, we were doing very well, and it has other diseases, malaria, tuberculosis. Then there are those ones which are difficult to measure, like goal number 8, which is about partnerships and networking. And have we built partnerships and networks? How do you measure? But there are some measurements in there. There are some targets that are embedded in there. One of them, for instance, is about urbanization. So many people should have come out of slums by that time. Now, we didn't have that many people in slums as a country. So some of these are not very applicable. There are 2 where we have performed reasonably poorly. One is on the maternal deaths, the health of women, and the second one is the health of children. Okay. Yes, we have performed badly quite on those ones.
Richard, when you talk about doing a little bit fine on HIV and AIDS programs, I think we've seen the prevalence of HIV in the past few years increase by a few percentages there. Does that mean we are doing good when we still have more cases, more new cases coming up each and every day?
No, there are targets within the goals. There are specific targets. So you should have reduced the HIV prevalence by a certain percentage. Okay. So let's say we used to be at 30%, we reduced that to 6%. Over the years, we have increased it to 7.3% or thereabouts. Yeah, still, even with the increase, it's alarming. We shouldn't increase at all. We should actually be going down. But with the 1.3% increase, it's alarming, yes, but we are still way below the target that was set. We still achieved so much that we haven't reversed that really. But you see, I don't want to create the impression, because I know then people take comfort in that. It's very dangerous for the prevalence of HIV or for any other disease for that matter to increase. Yeah. Yes, it shouldn't. But the increment does not really do so much damage to the attainment we got as a country.
Okay, and Linda, yes, you still spoke about us doing well when it comes to HIV and AIDS prevention right there. What are the strides, what are the steps we've taken in achieving that goal right there?
If you look at the situation in the country now, everyone is talking about HIV/AIDS. In the schools, they're educating about it in schools, and it's not like how it used to be. People no longer are scared about this disease like they used to be. It's not like there's not so much segregation among the people. The stigma is there, but it has really reduced. So when you look at that, there are many NGOs that have come up to fight this, to help deal with the people who are sick and, prevent it. That shows that we have actually improved on it.
All right, Linda, let's talk about the areas that Richard highlighted as the ones where we are doing very poorly.
I didn't say that. I didn't say very poorly.
Okay, the areas
where
we have not done. Okay, the ones where we have not done fine. Let's talk about maternal health and the health and rights of children. What exactly is the missing link, and how can the country address that, especially considering that when you talk about maternal health, you're talking about not just the mothers, but their unborn children as well?
When we talk about maternal health, usually the targets are like really broad. For example, you take a look at the Millennium Development Goals. It was like, a whole big target probably that cannot actually be measured. Okay, it could be measured, but it's not like that specific. So when you look at the post-2015 development agenda, they're looking at having more specific targets that will help us reach this and reach it well. For example, let me take you off the maternal health. Let's look at the education. It's not only having people accessing the schools. We're looking at the quality. What quality are the people who are accessing schools getting? We're looking at the syllabus. So those specifics, that when someone actually accesses the school or gets to school, they come up with quality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Richard, a few months actually. We're in 2014. I had forgotten. Yeah, we're heading to the deadline, and as you've been around both as a practitioner in the media and someone engaged in advocacy work. What is that one thing that has evaded the nation in achieving maybe the basic benchmarks in the health sector, especially concerning the maternal health situation?
For me, I think that the challenges of the health sector are not separate from the challenges that we face as a society, as a community. And this is not just Uganda. I think it's as a region, as what. There are, for me, about three critical things. One is that oftentimes we make plans that are not adequately informed by research, by getting information from the ground. Two, when we make those plans, we don't invest as the plans require that we invest. If, for instance, we say, let me say I'm going to Mbarara in Nkokonjeru, my home, I need 20,000 shillings to go there. So I make a plan to go to Nkokonjeru tomorrow. But instead of committing 20,000 shillings to get me there, I get 15,000. I will most probably not get there. That's what we do as a country. So we don't even commit the resources. But three, even the resources that we commit, when we do, they actually don't do what is on the plan. Okay. So for me, those are three critical issues that make us miss the development goals that we set ourselves, the Millennium Development Goals that we are concluding next year, and the new Sustainable Development Goals, or whatever the name, post-2015, that we are planning to have.
But Richard, let's still dwell on the health sector as Uganda. Do you think we've given it as much attention as it desires? Because when we try to look at the budgetary allocations, they are minimal. But then on the other hand, the other sectors that get the huge share of the budget are actually sectors to deal with infrastructure, sectors to deal with security. Do you think we've paid as much attention to the health sector as we should have, looking at how it is limping at this point in time?
You see, if you look at our proposals in the new development agenda for the one, really, it's a United Nations movement. One of our proposals, as the United Nations Association, but also consulting young people in universities, is the question of saying that investment in security is not a development investment. We disagree.
Yeah, we do.
We think that you cannot have development without security. True. So you need to invest in security deliberately. You need to be you need peace and you need stability.
Yes.
But that's one, you need to invest there deliberately as a development thing. That means that your investments, therefore, in security must answer to the development needs that you have. For example, if, for example, now we have terrorism, terrorism reverses the development achievements. War reverses the development achievements. So that's one. The second thing is to look at infrastructure, for instance, as not a social development thing, for me is also a problem. Sure. Because if you have health units that cannot be accessed, if you have household products that cannot go to the market, you cannot ensure health. Remember, for me, health is made at home. Really, I loved that quotation. A lot of people think that health is made at the health unit. No, the health unit is a garage. Yes. That means it has broken down. You don't take your car to the garage before it breaks down. Yes. So the health unit for me is a garage. But we all wait. In our minds, we think that health is done at the garage. So we wait to break down. We do nothing to service ourselves, to maintain proper ourselves. And when we break down in our homes, and the things are easy. I mean, I shouldn't divert you on this, but the things are easy. Wash hands. Wash hands with clean water and soap. You can cut 80% of the communicable infections.
We've had areas that have less access to clean and safe water.
I mean, yes.
That's also another problem.
But you see, also, for me, even those who have access still do dirty water. So the mind, you have to deal with the mind and tell it that, look, this mind should understand that clean water is a must for your health. A good road is, but investment in health. I think for me, the resource investment in health has been very reasonable. If you combine the resources from government and the resources from the donors, I think it has been very reasonable. The challenge really has been the looting of these resources, according to me.
And Richard, that challenge appears here to stay. As we're trying to, as a nation, trying to find a way forward. What is your proposal? What is your recommendation for the way forward? When you talk about looting, it's something that appears here to stay.
One of the things we talk about in the post-2015 development agenda is governance. We think that governance must be focused on as a development issue. I mean, why do we loot? It's largely a question of bad governance. If you loot and you are painfully dealt with, there will be carefulness about the looting. It's for me, it's not dealt with.
But Richard, there's one perspective to that. There's the question of he is ours, she is ours. I've seen examples of when they come out to deal with certain people in really tough ways. You see the communities, they get themselves together, they go to State House and meet the president and say, this, pardon our son, pardon our daughter. With that mentality in the society, do you think that can be a reality in this country?
Let me tell you, they come near political power. However many communities will come to plead for you, you will be clamped, I can assure you. So it is not that the powers that be don't have the capacity to clamp or don't even have a history of clamping. They do, only when you come near power. They attach it and you will see fire. But then the money, no one cares. You can steal the money and go. So that for me is the problem.
Okay.
All right.
Now, Linda, we have very, very many unfulfilled goals, and we have just a few months to 2015. This is the 1st of July, and we have about 5 more months to end the year. What do you think has been the problem in failure to fulfill these goals? Is it because we are wholesomely thinking about each and every goal and we are not setting out specific sections that we need to address, or there is something else that is causing the problem?
I wouldn't say that we have failed. Uganda is actually one of those that is on track. We have not actually failed. And one of the reasons could be probably the targets. Some of the targets are too ambiguous. So in the post-2015 development agenda, we are looking at more specific targets.
Okay.
Yeah, for example, if you look at the youth, we recently were in New York, a group of youth who were trying to have their voices into the post-2015 development agenda. And we singled out 5 areas that we think if they are paid attention to, then the youth would be in a better community. And these are education. That is where we looked at, the quality of education, the teachers, the curriculum. We went in and looked at the targets that will help us in these 5 areas. The other was governance and participation. Like you were saying, the looting. Most people who loot are the youth. And why do they loot? It's because they're not involved. They're not part of this decision making. So we are looking at if they're involved, if they're taken as part. The youth need to be appreciated not just as numbers, but as a valuable asset. like, you know, like the saying goes.
Let's first not get away from that issue of youth involvement in governance. My experience of what youth really do in the present era is organize themselves in a group of 60, get access to the president. Some of them kneel down, including the youth leaders. They kneel down, and after they've made their money, really, what do you think is that magic stroke that can be done to turn around that mentality? The youth are so much into begging.
I think we just have to tilt the begging thing. We don't have to show that we are going to give you money to do ABCD. Like, there's a question that was asked, what is sustainability? Is it extension of failure? So how are we going to help the youth be sustainable without actually extending failure? Because, for example, if you started up a project and then I say I'm going to fund you for 1 year, and then when you withdraw from the funding after the year, the project fails. So how are you going to see that you're actually supporting this person, and after you have withdrawn, like you have stopped funding that given person, they can actually stand on their feet and go on.
Okay.
So we need the decision makers and whoever is, you know, dealing with the youth. You need to look at how are you helping these young people to you know, go on even when you have, you know, let go.
Richard, let's try to assess youth participation in governance in Uganda. Well, there have been quite a lot of complaints. Youths are not involved, we're not being taken care of. And government, of course, has come up with some programs to empower the youth. But first of all, to governments, before we go to empowerment, do you think the youth have taken a role that they are meant to take in Uganda, given the fact that they do compose the greatest percentage of the population?
You see, so there are some factors that have to be taken into consideration. We founded this, for example, the United Nations Association of Uganda. We founded it about 15 years ago. Now, about 15 years ago, we were not so far away after university.
Yeah.
We had been student leaders, and that's how this idea came up. But when we did start, we went to introduce ourselves to the United Nations, and particularly the UNDP, where the resident coordination for the UN is. And we were dismissed as a bunch of troublemaker young boys and girls who want to ride on the good image of the UN for probably evil reasons. That did not discourage us. We were very clear what the idea was, we were very clear what the values were, we were very clear what the objective was. So we stuck. It was a group of us, a few, 2, 3, 4 of us, and we stuck. Now, 5 years later, on the UN Day, we were given an award for being the most supportive group of civil society for the UN. You see, there is need for persistence. There is need for focus. There is need, you know, a lot of young people get excited with very small things. Okay. They get very excited with shisha, with things. Now, there is need for focus. The second thing, and I think it's a major missing link, and I've seen it with the leaders, with the people we work with. We work a lot in universities, we work a lot in schools. You see, what happens is the people who are in leadership don't really go to the youth to empower them. Actually, they fear empowering the youth. Yes, because you see, when you empower young people, they start demanding. They demand for what is due to them. And when they start demanding what is due to them, then they're looting, then then you'll be challenged. So you want to disempower them by giving them handouts and keeping them on handouts. And that's the question, why do you sustain failure? Because then you remain the one they look to. So for me, the youth need to be mentored. Let me tell you my quarrel, for example, with the latest fad of, what do you call it, this youth fund.
Livelihood program.
I can assure you, you have all been young. If some of you are still young, you're still youth. Get somebody out of university. Give them 12.5 million without any mentorship.
Isn't that
without any guidance? Without, that is disempowering.
Richard,
the first thing they will run to do is either to make up or to buy a better trouser, because they are not mentored.
Richard,
the mindset are not prepared to receive.
Who is going to do the mentorship? We have talked about leaders.
Who is giving the money? Who is giving the money?
They want to be the only bulls in the crowd.
There is somebody giving the money, very clearly. So those institutions that are giving out the money, it's a consortium of high-sounding institutions. 250 billions. Do you know what 250 billions is? You see, when you want the youth to understand the amount of money, you talk about it in millions. Because billions, they won't appreciate it very well. How many millions are in 1 billion? Multiply that by 250. You know, you have 250,000 millions. Why should it create a change? But all these guys hand over money to Linda.
And all Linda does is go shopping.
$5,000.